Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on installing Visual Studio here tonight. And I have one of my students sharing their screen. And Teresa, go ahead and click on that in Visual Studio link there. That will take you to kind of a secondary page of instructions here. Um, if you guys are interested, and I'm just going to say this up front, in installing the Pro or the Enterprise versions and want to get a license key, you can follow the instructions below that say Azure for Education. But I'm going to leave that on you. I'm not going to demonstrate that during class time. But it is available for you if that's really the pathway you want to walk. I do in many ways prefer the community version and the latest community version, which is version 2022. Go ahead and click the link to go to Microsoft, and you'll land on their page here. And what I'd like you to do is click on the community version there and click on the download. All right, and that'll drop into your downloads folder. And you can see Teresa is launching the installer here. You might get a user account control screen that is asking you to allow the software to make changes. All right, it looks like you are getting past that point already, and it's downloading right now the installer, right? So it's not downloading the product, but the tool we use to install the product. All right, so now that you're at the actual installer screen, there are some selections here that we need to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to do the coding. Generally speaking, the one of the default languages for this product is C#, which is the language that we're here to learn. However, and I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips here. As you move forward in your program, you'll take different classes where you're going to have different requirements for stuff that you will need to add to Visual Studio. And this interface that we're bringing up right now, which is the Visual Studio installer interface, is always accessible from your start menu. So if you're missing a tool, you can relaunch this product and select the stuff that you're missing and install it later, right? So if you didn't install it right, well, you can come in here and fix it, basically, is kind of my point. If some of you have already installed the product, you might want to go to your start menu, click the Visual Studio installer, bring it up on screen, and follow along with some of the selections that we're making here. Right. The first thing I'm going to have you check, and part of this is kind of relevant to what degree path that you guys are in. Are all of you guys web or software students? Is that a safe assumption? I know one of you is a CSS, right? But all the rest are web and software. All right. So here's the ones that I'm going to ask you to install because I think they're pertinent to install. Go ahead and click on the ASP.NET and web development. Click on Node.js. If you plan on taking the Python class, I don't know if it's required in the web program or not. That's not a bad one to add just to have. So up in the top right there, the Python. The C++ stuff we'll leave alone, but we are going to click on the .NET desktop development. I'm tempted to do the window application development things, but we'll leave that for later, but you could always add it if you wish. And then at the bottom panel where it says data storage and processing, I recommend that you add that plugin as well, right? And that allows you to interface with databases, basically. Now, the thing that I want to point out here, these aren't the only things that you can add. And if you look at the very top of your screen, I'm going to draw on your screen here for a second. You'll notice there's individual components, language packs, and where you're pulling the repository from. And this is just a small smattering of the tools that you can add to Visual Studio, by the way. But for now, this is an adequate selection. I do want you to notice down here, it does tell you how much space that's going to occupy in your machine. It's not too much, right? It's only 10 gigs. All right. So I thought it was like more like 20 or 30, but it's only 10 gigs. All right. So there's also this secondary little option here that's install while downloading. And that's really kind of a neat feature that they've added, well, not that long ago, but I'm guessing 5, 6 years ago, something like that, where basically it's downloading like the next package while it's installing the current one it already downloaded, rather than waiting for everything to download and then do the install. So it makes it go a lot faster. So just go ahead and click that install button and let's get that process going. Let's see how long it takes your machine to do it. Hopefully not that long, right? It should give you a time estimate. It shows you your transfer rate right now. So you're on a pretty fast download, right? It's at 17 megabytes per second, not megabits. So you multiply that, so it's over 100 megs down. I'm trying to do a comparison. Out of curiosity, do you know who your service provider is for internet?
Um, I think it's like TBS or something like that.
TDS Metrocom?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
That's okay. All right. I don't know if they have a time estimate on this, but it's going pretty quick. And for all of you that are out there, if you were adding plugins to the installation that maybe you didn't have before, you're probably going through the same process. So I just want to make sure that you guys all have the right tools. Now we could just download it, install it, and operate it, and it would work just fine, by the way, because C# is the default language for the tool. But I think it's helpful to have the other tools available, especially if you're taking other classes. So like if, for example, you're taking a Python class and you're pushed to use a certain IDE, you could always code in Visual Studio. I'm just putting it out there. Or let's say we're about halfway done with the download, about a third of the way done with the install. Um, the other little kind of interesting tidbit on this product is it does get a lot of updates. Generally speaking, you want to perform those updates, to keep the product, secure for one thing, and then using the latest tools without bugs. You want this all. If there's any flaws in the software, you want to work with the working version, not the non-working version. Once we get this installed, we'll do a little bit of a kind of a tour of the environment. And I don't know if we'll probably save that for when we're doing the lecture kind of stuff, but we will take a very quick look as the product finishes installing. But I think, you should be happy with your download rate. It's going really quick.
I wish I knew who the provider was. I'm gonna ask my husband.
All right. So since we're waiting for, like paint to dry here, who do you guys use for internet? I'm a Spectrum customer. Does anybody know who you're using at home?
Maybe that's who we have. That might be it.
AT&T for me. I had a horrible experience with Spectrum.
Sorry to hear that. I've had those moments too, believe it or not, but nobody else knows, huh?
They're like me, I guess.
or nobody else cares to respond. And that's all right.
I also have Spectrum too.
Yeah.
One little tip I've been giving people is, especially if you're paying for your own internet and you do this kind of work, both for school or professionally, it sometimes makes sense that if you're on like the base level service, to pay the little bit extra to go up a tier. It can really, it really makes a huge difference in speed and connectivity. This is moving really, really fast here. So looks like we only have a little bit left to go. It's pretty impressive since it's like a 10 gig download and then it's decompressing and installing all of that stuff at the same time. So you must have a pretty
My
powerful machine there.
my husband works in IT, so I wouldn't doubt he works from home and he works in IT, so I wouldn't doubt we're on some kind of plan that is good for that.
Internet on steroids, basically.
Yeah.
All right, folks. All right. And do you ever notice, like when you do software install, that last 1% takes longer than all the other percents. All right, when this finishes up, it will, I think, try to launch the product. So I want you to go ahead and do that. All right. And Teresa, you're already signed in, which is great. So it must have remembered your login from last time. But when you guys do launch the product, I want you to keep in mind when you sign in, you want to sign in with a Microsoft account. So if you have an Xbox account, Outlook Mail, my strong recommendation is to sign in with your school account. And it will go through the process of trying to validate you. And I might have that issue when I bring it up on my screen. All right. So right now you're getting to the splash screen for the product, which is kind of like, open a project or create a new one kind of screen. But you'll notice here in the little option panel, continue without code. Could you click that for me? And what I'm having Teresa do here, folks, is I'm just getting her to launch it so we can see what it looks like. And I'm just going to give you kind of like a brief little tour. So they're giving you like a what's new thing. If you could do me the favor and just hit the X up there and close that. Right. Not that that's not relevant, but all right. Yeah, they're also pushing their AI tool, which is built into the product as well. All right. So this is Visual Studio. Visual Studio is arguably, the world's most powerful IDE. It is the IDE that Microsoft uses internally to create all of its internal stuff, including the Windows operating system. Any of the stuff that's embedded into their operating system is created using this product. The product is very complicated. I don't want to freak you out with that, but it's kind of like, if you sit in the cockpit of a jet plane. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the inside of the cockpit of a jet plane, and you look in there and you go, oh my God, what do all these buttons do? What are all these options? What are all these levers? What are all these gauges? What are all these screens? And Visual Studio is overwhelming like that. I'm going to coach you here to just do a really basic thing. Go up to your file menu and choose new project. Right. So now we're going to go back to that original screen. Right. So this is the screen you usually get when you start. And we're going to be coding in the C# language. And I want you to notice that when you hit this interface here, they have these 3 drop downs here, right, where you make selections that kind of help to narrow down your choices. So since we're coding in the C# language, click on the drop down there for all languages and find C#. All right. So what that'll do is it'll narrow down the list of project templates on the screen here to the ones that support C#. And it may not have changed on your screen at all, because that's the ones that are kind of default, by the way. The other thing that, let's click on all platforms, right? And you'll notice that you can choose what you're outputting to, right? In this case, we're going to Windows. So go ahead and click Windows, right? And now you'll notice at the very top, the one that we're looking for right here, which is a console app. And this is where we're going to live this semester, is in that project template. Go ahead and select that template and then click the next button at the bottom. All right. And we're just doing a test here, by the way, right? So we're just going to go with the name that it's giving us. The other thing I want you to notice really carefully is where it's storing the files by default, right? And this is not, by the way, your documents folder or your OneDrive or your Google Drive or wherever you put your stuff. This is in your user directory in a folder called source that you don't normally see in your file system when you're just kind of floating around. And then in a thing called repos, right? Which is kind of like coding speak for repository of code, right? There's no reason to change from that folder for right now. If you choose to store your stuff in a different spot, I can coach you on like how to get there. In fact, I often do that because I don't want my stuff going in that folder, if you feel what I'm saying. So right now, I also want you to check that little box at the bottom that says place solution and project in the same directory. In situations when you choose to, and this is kind of going down the rabbit hole a little bit, but often when we're creating applications, there are really a bunch of applications working together. And if you're making something complex like that, you would leave that unchecked. Most of the work we'll do will leave that checked. Go ahead and click next. All right. And then I want you to notice that this is defaulting to version 8 of .NET. And if you notice from like all the materials in the class so far, we've built all the course materials here based upon .NET 6.0. It is okay to use .NET 8, by the way, right? I do want you to hit the drop down though, and I want you to notice a couple of things. Oh, that's the only one that's listed. Okay, interesting. Well, I guess you don't have a choice, right? So that might be something that we can look at adding, right? So if you guys have other versions available, great. If not, go with the one that's available. It is fully backwards compatible, by the way. There's other switches here. One's for container support. We'll talk about what that is later. And then we have these really weird little buttons like do not use top level statements. We're going to leave those unchecked for now, right? So I want you to go ahead and hit the create button and let it build out the project. So what this does is it will pre-populate the project structure. It'll build the folders where we're storing stuff. It'll load up all the tools that we need to do the code and attach us to all the correct libraries. And I want you to notice that right inside the product, right off the bat, there's already a hello world built for you. You didn't even have to build it, right? Pretty slick. So the coding environment basically breaks down into a couple of different areas. There's the big like coding window over here, right? This is where you type your code. It's basically just a plain text editor. That's really all it is, right? What you will notice is depending on the language that you're working in, it will color code your code to show you what type of code you're dealing with. Is it like a system level command? Is it a function? Is it text? Is it a number? Is it a variable? Is it a, whatever, what you're creating. The other area that becomes pretty important for us too is this solution explorer area over here on the right, where, and I always like try to catch myself on saying this very clearly. This is kind of like, it seems like a file explorer, right? Like you're looking at your files, and you are, but really it's a project asset explorer, right? So you're looking at objects that are in your project, which may or may not be files. This is kind of a weird little thing. You'll also notice that some of these things will have these little arrows that sit next to them. And when they're pointing sideways, they're not expanded. When they're pointed downwards, they are. So if you can click that little arrow, Teresa, just to kind of expand that, and you'll notice that, okay, there's all these dependencies and frameworks. Yeah. And there's all these like tools that automatically have been added to your project. What are these? These are the libraries that create and run C# code, right? That is attached to the project because otherwise it won't work. So the project travels with those things. So when we turn this into a binary file, executable file, those libraries kind of get bundled in and allow that executable file to be created. Without them, we cannot create anything, right? So you can collapse those dependencies. We'll really never go in there. The one file that was automatically created here is the program.cs file, right? That's like, the default file that is created. Or better yet, does your program need to be called that every time? No, you can call it really whatever file name you want. But this is kind of the default, right? That file is currently loaded over here. You can see it in the tab up top. right? Um, and it is possible to have many open tabs, as you might imagine, and code. A couple of things that you'll learn here, like right now, like Teresa, you're working on your laptop screen, right? And this is the smaller of your two screens. You will notice, like when I'm doing demos and stuff, I will totally zoom in on the code. And so you can zoom in a couple of different ways. And this is pretty intuitive if you're, a relatively savvy computer user. You can use on Windows, you can hold down your control key and scroll with your mouse, and then that will zoom in and out. There you go. You can also hit the control key and use plus or minus to make it bigger or smaller, by the way. Right. If you're struggling to see it, you shouldn't. I mean, make it as big as you need to make yourself comfortable. All right. Now there is some stuff already like added to the program here. And this is a program that's already ready to run. So we're going to go ahead and run it, make sure it works. So up at the top of the screen, you'll see that there's a little green play button, and it has the name of the app loaded in there. If you hit that button, the one next to it. Yep, that one. Go ahead and click it. Down here at the bottom, you'll see our output window, which will tell us what's happening in the background. And then I'm gathering it went to your other screen. If you could pull that window over, there you go. It will open up a console window, or basically a command line window, and execute the program. All right. So I want you to notice, and this is really hard to tell that it even worked, but see, this is a command, the write line command. It's the first one we learned, that says, write this to the screen. So it did right here. Hello world is written to the screen. The program stopped because it was over. And then it gives you this message. And now it's saying, press any key to close the window. So go ahead and do that. Just press any key and close the window. But that would be the successful installation and execution, creation of a really super simple program to make sure that Visual Studio is working. All right, I'm going to terminate this recording here.